intended to protect that data. You know what should be happening. So let's say you do lose a backup tape. You know what controls are intended to protect you in that kind of situation. So you're able to better respond to incidents because you have anticipated that with an appropriate standards of controls to protect that data. Now, the one note that I make here is about control testing. So let's say that everybody knows that with this file cabinet that we were talking about earlier, that the key is permanently in the file cabinet. It doesn't get taken out at the end of the day, and that it's not really locked. Well, let's say the manager of that department says, yes, this file cabinet is locked at all times. This is an example of where we do follow-up testing and auditing. And a lot of times internal audit departments, consultants, or the information security department itself will perform what we call implementation testing or validation testing. Basically a test to say, all right, you said that this is your control, but is it really effective? Is it really effectively implemented in your organization? And that might be because the person filling out just doesn't know, or because maybe they wanted to paint their department a little more rosy than it actually is. And so following up on the controls, once you've had a department that says, yes, this cabinet's locked at all times, it's very easy then to walk through that department, maybe on an off hour and say, all right, are they living up to what they said that they were as far as their controls? So once we go through and we identify the gaps, we can compile what are our list of gaps and what are the threats because of those gaps. Once we identify, hey, here are all of the problems that we found during our risk assessment, we can say, so what? So that file cabinet's unlocked. What's the real impact? What's the impact on our business? What kind of loss might we exhibit so we can prioritize for management? All right, here are the hot buttons. Here are the things we need to fix first and foremost because of this gap, we've got a pending threat where we could lose sensitive information. Again, identifying the practical solution is always the most important thing, whether that be truncation, whether that be, a control that may be slightly different than the standard. One of the things that a lot of companies will do with their information security policies is that they may have exceptions. So the standard may be that they encrypt all laptops, but they may have certain laptops where it's impractical to encrypt. And so they look at alternative solutions and just note those as exceptions to their data privacy program, allowed exceptions to their program. All right. So what we try to lay out for companies is what's the long-term plan. So you do this great assessment. We talked about getting senior management buy-in. We talked about doing the assessment. Once you have the assessment and you've agreed upon your controls that are important to you, that's when you start your long-term planning. What's my information security plan? What's my master document that's going to memorialize the appropriate controls for each type of information asset and for our environment as a whole? You establish an incident response plan. Of course, no one wants to have any sort of incident. No one wants to have any sort of situation where they lose data. But unfortunately, in most companies, Murphy's Law, there is a possibility that you would have an incident to lose data. So you know how you could respond quickly and promptly. One of the criticisms of Bank of America was that they didn't react fast enough. The examiners and the government agencies felt like they should have reacted faster, notified customers faster. And we see frequent occurrences in the news of companies that not only have lost data, but they're being criticized because there's a feeling that they held the fact that they lost data too long. They went too long without notifying consumers. We talked about testing. Some of the different types of testing that we perform on a regular basis are social engineering tests. So you do an employee awareness program, but does that really stop someone from giving out their password when you call and ask for it? Penetration testing is another way to make sure that applications, if you have a software vendor that claims that their web-based application is safe from a certain number of vulnerabilities, by doing an ethical hacking penetration test, you can test whether or not it's really the case. You can see the other tests there. Long term, you have to have a sustainable process for data privacy, and that involves having an owner, having someone in the organization that's responsible for data privacy long term, having ongoing awareness, like I said, those emails, or some people will do web-based training periodically, posters, inserts in employee newsletters, etc., having that constant presence of data privacy throughout their organization. Periodically, you're going to have to go back and say, all right, is this still our list of information assets? Is there anything new that we've done? Is there a new business offering that we have that might impact data privacy? So you periodically have to go back and keep updated with your inventory of information assets and your understanding of how those information assets are controlled. And then based on that, you may need to make modifications to your information security program. So you may need to go back and say, all right, these controls no longer fit our environment. What can we do to tweak these and make these more strong, considering our new business line or considering our the changes in our corporate environment? Okay. So that's the long-term plan. Does anybody have any questions on data privacy or privacy concerns at companies, etc.? All right. Well, if there are no questions, I guess we'll conclude a little bit early. And I appreciate your participation.
Thank you. Anybody else?